Well, Jeannette, so good to see you again.
Indeed.
Indeed. Where do we find you today, Jeannette?
Today I'm in Brussels, and I take it you're in Amsterdam.
Definitely. I could wave to a place where you've worked for quite some time, I understand, at the Philips office, just at the other side of the river, indeed.
Indeed, indeed. It's a great place to work.
Well, good to hear, good to hear. Well, to give you a bit of a proper introduction, if I may, to the audience, because you're really an impressive marketing leader in our industry. But you were also already a global citizen, I understand, at the age of 12, living on 3 continents. Well, at least as a European, I count North America and South America as 2 continents, if I may. And your career spans 4 continents, if I'm correct. You worked in both the emerging markets as mature markets for really an impressive list of leading global companies: IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, Philips, and now Mastercard, of course. And in a previous interview, I learned from you a little bit about your North Star goal. If I may quote you, please correct me if I got it wrong. You said being able to create and have a platform that change for good. Inclusion and the environment are bigger goals. Doing well by doing good. Well, I'm really interested, Jeannette, as a start, maybe on a personal note, as a marketer and as a leader. Can you share a bit of the stepping stones in your career and what's important for you on those three angles?
Sure. So I actually started at IBM because I was hired by my statistics teacher at university. So he thought I was quite nerdy, and he thought, well, she should come and work for computer science. And I hadn't seen it so much in myself, but he did. So that was amazing. And one of the first companies that I had a lot of interaction with was Oracle. And I really grew up in Oracle, I have to say. It was my first real job. I did first comms, then marketing all up, and product, performance marketing. I went there from Argentina to Latin America to global to North America. And at the time I started in North America, I headed up telemarketing, and it was the time that Mark Benioff was running all of the databases for Oracle. And we were able to see a lot of data already coming in on the screen of what everyone had already done in touch points. And this was like 20 years ago. And I didn't realize it, but I was living in a moment that would define everything we do today. And that was pretty cool because I'm a nerd, I would nerd out watching the screen, watching to see how many people were entering, doing what. And that was very exciting. And I realized I had a passion for technology that I may not have seen in myself, but I discovered in my role. And from then on, I stayed in technology one way or another, whether it was health tech, because that's very meaningful to save people's lives, or payments tech, because everybody needs to be included in the financial system. And if we can, like you said before about the planet, if we can influence people at the point of payment to be mindful, that's a very powerful place to be. You know, you can interpret it as a point of consumption, or you can interpret it as a point of inflection. And so, yeah, purpose has always been important, but I think what really the milestone for me was being exposed to people who were fanatic about their technology, and the technology was really something different.
I think the combination that you make of technology and marketing is, let's say, really an amazing background. I think a lot of marketeers could benefit a lot, like, to tap in all those developments that are in society, but also touching consumers as well. I would really be interested as well to learn a bit more how you see this being and a marketer and call yourself a little bit nerdy. How has that helped you, that combination?
Well, I think it's important as a marketer to be always curious. And it all starts with the insight. As you well know, it really all starts with a deep insight, whether you're trying to change a consumer behavior or trying to launch something that's completely new, like having people install something to charge their car with in their home that they've never done before, or whatever it is. It's very important to go deep into why. What's the trigger of that person? What's in it for them in a way that's very intelligently designed from a communications messaging perspective. Super easy, but super powerful, and will trigger that action. And if you can connect it to a why, the environment, health, your finances for your family, whatever it is, if you can tie it to as a brand market as close as to what you do as a business, I think that's just more authentic. So it's more powerful.
Yeah, I think what you're saying helps probably so much as well. Also, not to get too, let's say, too far catch up only in the technical side of the in it, but as well, let's say, why can ground you so beautiful, of course, in the humanizing growth side. Well, talking a little bit about, let's say, growing as a human and your amazing journey, as I described a little bit in the introduction. I would really be curious. Of course, nobody does it by himself, I hope. I would really be interested as well, what kind of really help did you get from a mentor or an advisor? What's the best help or advice that you get on the journey?
Well, oddly, I would say my husband, because we met at Microsoft. There's a lot of couples who meet at Microsoft who work in different parts. He's a data scientist, and he was running the data management platform or establishing that for all of Microsoft in Seattle. And I was the head of Latin America. And when we met, and afterwards, when we had different jobs, but we'd moved to Europe, he would always be like, but so what's your next step? So what are you going to develop to get to your next role? Or, you should promote yourself when you're doing this. Like, you should stand up and say you're doing this. It's not a bad thing. You can say it in a way that's calm and not annoying. But he was the one that helped me think a little bit more agile about being more structured with my profile and not having, and still being true to myself, not being uncomfortable with it. And also a little structured with my career, even though I've always been guided by the roles, the work, and the culture. And also the industry. I think what you do has to be interesting for you if you're on the brand side. If you're doing something that's not stimulating you, that's a watch out as well, even if you're with great people. But he really was a good coach, and I coached him back, right? I don't think about brand and other things, and so purpose and all that, and again messaging. But that, I think, having that proximity and that trust in someone who just thinks a little different and would maybe approach their career a little bit differently is always helpful.
Yeah, that sounds like a super strong team.
It is.
At home at the couch. Where better than having a team member like that, I would say. Jeannette, you can almost not have a conversation together nowadays without not talking about the chaos in our environment or the rapid change in the environment. And in a way, of course, we just come out of COVID, or maybe we're not even completely out of COVID. Nobody knows in the end, but it definitely has shown some really, let's say, massive change. What that has, and in a way, many people have talked about what COVID did for e-commerce and the penetration growth, and talking, let's say, that 10 years of penetration growth happened in 10 weeks, and you could say maybe as well to the situation where we're currently in with, well, everything that caused it, but let's say the causes, the effects in inflation and people really having trouble with how much money that they have in their wallet and everything that is around that, or supply chain disruptions. But let's say if in this case as well something good comes in the end out of something bad, and energy transformation will go faster. I'm really curious in how you look at trends in this fast changing and chaotic environment. What do you see? What is relevant for your business? Where do you focus on? What things maybe you do not focus on. Can you share a little bit your view on what this means for us as marketeers and business leaders?
Of course, so many of the behavioral trends on spending that you mentioned, or in digital that you mentioned, apply to spending, like changes we thought in the use of cash accelerated in 24 months that we thought would accelerate in 15, 20 years, even in Europe. And so the digitization of businesses also, that was a very big push across COVID. I think, however, unfortunately, for example, for female entrepreneurs, it's estimated that COVID has set gender parity back 36 years, if I'm not mistaken. 36 years. So it's 50% of the world's population and workforce, but especially female entrepreneurs and small and medium businesses, they've been set back for a number of reasons. They had part-time jobs. They were working in sectors that were particularly vulnerable. They had to take care of family or children or their parents, and they weren't as digital. They might not have had the luxury of having someone beside them to help them gain either access or digitize their business so they could sell online and catch that digital wave. Yeah. So a lot of the work that we do at Mastercard, and in particular in Europe, has been around female entrepreneurs. All up, our goal since 2015 is to include 1 billion people in the financial system. And this morning I checked, and we're at 675 million people included this year out of that 1 billion. And our goal is to include 1 billion by 2025. For female entrepreneurs, our goal is to digitize 25 million female entrepreneurs, and we're at 18 million. So we have been able to make some progress throughout COVID, especially across all of Europe, not only in things that are consumer facing, like working with governments to get contactless payments, so you don't have to dip your card all the time, because at the beginning, a big point of infection was the point of sale in stores where people bought food, for example, but also trying to get people on board, especially entrepreneurs, not only women, but especially, and keeping that up. And so it's going to be a while before that gets better because of COVID. But it's very, very important for financial access. There's more opportunities to access the financial system on phones than there is any other way today. So people have phones without having running water in some places in the world. So anything we can do to help facilitate that is very important.
Yeah, so like winds of change in a way for businesses, you could say, if you're well positioned, you can have an extra wind in your back and go faster, but the other way around as well. If you're not positioned back well, then you really have trouble, like the female entrepreneurs that you just described. So you're doing a lot. Can you deep dive a little bit more into that? Because that is massively interesting. Because in a way, you could say a lot of businesses that maybe are not well positioned. It's also a natural side of business that maybe some businesses are at the end of their life cycle, and that's good as well, is that happens. The subject that you bring into the conversation, obviously we should really want it to progress and push forward. So I'm massively interested in what you're doing to help them to progress on that becoming more digital.
So we had a massive campaign from, I think, two to 3 months into COVID to get just people with small and medium businesses just to have a point of sale that was electronic and not cash based. Even that was just a step. But on top of that, we layered a program, for example, in the UK, it's called Strive. And there we help female entrepreneurs go farther, like their website presence. Is it clear? Is the consumer journey as frictionless as possible? How can they market their wares versus the competition? How can they access certain marketplaces? And there we have a mentor system, a buddying system of entrepreneurs who help themselves. And so that, the deeper you can go, the farther you can go, the better. And also it's tied to our business. Those 1 billion people, if we can help include them and get access to the financial systems, They may well be the consumers of the future of our brand. It's good to help others by doing your business well in a way that goes beyond this quarter's earnings. It's something that you're. It's like agriculture. You're seeding for the future. I come from a family of farmers in Argentina, and so I'm used to that.
Yeah.
But it's powerful.
And Jeannette, if you're looking to what's on the plate of consumers now, like inflation in the newspaper every day, but cost of living challenges, and businesses bring that a lot to what to do with prices and have a lot of attention on prices. Well, if you're looking to more consumer understanding and trends, I learned that it's most of the time next to just the worry, it's also the uncertainty around what's coming next. Maybe even more than the challenges on your what you have in your wallet at church. If you're looking to those consumer behaviors, how you look at those for businesses and of course Mastercard in particular.
Well, I mean, every country is very different and has different personas and over-index in certain audiences or audience behaviors. For example, some of our countries in Europe used to over-index the highest on reckless spenders, who were young spenders with their first job, spending everything that came in. And those people have greatly grown up and become much more planners. Are they traditional planners that think about their mortgage for 20 years? And no, but that we've seen a massive shift all across Europe towards a more considered planning, using different instruments of buy now, pay later, using their debit instead of their credit, using different ways of looking at marketplaces to source what they need first, being much more engaged with their finances than they might be. There is a portion of the population that also is just disengaged. It's not something they think about that much. Now we all have to think about it, especially if you have a family, and not only, but it matters. So facilitating that, accompanying those people, making sure that they're safe, making sure their transactions are protected. That's a big part of our role. One of the things we also saw in COVID was a huge rise in cybersecurity risk. And thanks to our rails, we were able to protect every transaction and protect against fraud. And that's not a minor chunk of our time, but it's also very important. And so educating also businesses about future technologies, what's good for them, and what areas maybe aren't yet ready, is also, I think, part of being a responsible shaper of the market, so to speak.
Yeah, and as Mastercard being such a cultural relevant brand as well, can you share something about brand campaigns that you do in the light of this, or how you fill in your partnership? You have some brilliant and with very high profile partnerships as well. How do you activate on this at the moment?
Well, you know, Eric, this week was the birthday of 25 years of Priceless. So it's in 25 years that, and you know, going back to the insights, the insight for the original, it was just going to be one more campaign. And you know how it is at WPP, you do multiple campaigns, but it was just one more campaign at the beginning. And the insight was that experiences matter more to people than things. And that was 25 years ago. So even coming out of COVID, even with a lot of pressure on cost of living, even with limited spend, what we're seeing is also people really being mindful about how they spend their time and spending on experiences more than they would on other things, especially a shift from online spend to experiences. Sometimes those experiences are hybrid and they're online, offline, but that's still very true. And having the luxury of being in Europe, we're lucky enough to have certain sponsorship properties like UEFA Champions League, which is amazing, at least for Argentines, it's amazing. And being part of that culture, we have, for example, unique asset, which are the mascots, player mascots, which are the kids that accompany out the players onto the pitch in the final. And one of the recent things we did right before COVID is we had something called Kip Beats. We connected a piece of plastic to their hearts, around their hearts, like an echocardiogram. And when they walked out into the pitch, their parents that were looking from the stadium could hear their heartbeats as they walked out with, the Ronaldos or whoever. And so it was actually messy. And so that's cool to bring it to that emotional level. You're culturally relevant, you're part of Europe, but you also, for those people, an experience like that, they'll remember that for the rest of their lives. And the people who see that can also identify with that as well. For film, we sponsor Cannes Film Festival, Berlinale, Venice, and having independent voices. Many of these festivals champion films that no one else would see if it wasn't for them. So that's really a diversity play, actually, and an inclusion play for us. And it's very powerful. And one is super French, super Italian, and super German, but all three are global. They're universal in like football is, because it's about human stories. And so having that privilege to be able to sponsor those assets, but also champion either children's health in UEFA or the next generation. And in this case, they happen to be female directors, but all filmmakers. The next generation of filmmakers with mentors is really a luxury, but also I think it's something people value, because we could not invest in those, but those things matter to us. And also from a consumer perspective, if you connect with someone's passion, that radiates onto your brand. One of the things we sponsor is Kids Pool, which is the global kind of whoops, I'm about to be restarted and I don't want to be restarted.
I deferred my computer as well 5 minutes for this meeting. It's this tech stress that we can have, right?
Indeed. But we sponsor Kids Pool, and it's like the most dangerous piste in the world, and only like 10 skiers in the world can do it, and it's in Austria in January every year. So for people in Austria, that's a very big deal. For like super skiers all over the world, they watch that. And what we did was actually, before COVID, was an AR app where you could ski the Strife, that piste, in AR, and kind of go through the motion of being that kind of Olympic level skier. And, some people got dizzy and stuff, but some people loved it. And, it's not something I'm going to be able to do in the real world. So it's cool being able to just experience that as well. So the passions and sponsorships, they're kind of an engine of passion for us. And we try to go in as deep as possible, and from there give people experiences online and offline.
Well, you mentioned so much beautiful things, and as a ski geek, I really have to talk about the Mausfaller when you talk about Strife, and then definitely my phone is also wanting to join us, but nobody of the audience probably will follow that one. But if you bring it into soccer and you say, hey, what is your heart been doing while you're walking on the pitch with Ronaldo? Oh no, it was actually Messi. It was a beautiful, a beautiful sentence that I will not easy forget. But let's say the key thing, what stands out, of course, let's say 25 years of priceless, a long line, and then we're talking, let's say, also a little bit about big, let's say, hiccups in society on COVID and now inflation, and then still that long line that has brought you so much, and even now in this period is I think really an amazing story, and so valuable, I think, to learn from. But I would be interested as well, as you're both very much, of course, business to consumer as business to business. Can you deep dive a bit into that? Because I think a lot of marketing, how we do marketing in business to business and business to consumer has grown to each other. But still, I think, especially, there's probably a lot to learn from business to business side as well. Could you deep dive into that a bit?
Of course. Well, I mean, I think it's always important to remember that customers are consumers too. And I'm sure you see this every day, but taking out the corporate speech in the B2B part and just explaining what it is, the solution you're providing in a very simple, intelligently designed way is so important. I think the difference now, and you know, all the digitalization is helping us, is that you're starting to see in B2B these deep data management platforms that unify all the touch points in the single source of truth, so that you can actually target buying groups and go higher into the C-suite than you have before, which is some of the sophistication that we had in personalization already on the B2C side. So you're starting to see some of those more advanced data thinking in terms of really being able to curate consumer experiences and customer experiences in the same kind of in the same kind of depth, but in a different way. That's one thing. And then another thing is you know, that immersiveness of certain experiences and using things like AR or VR or whatever. Customers love it as well. One of the things we always have in our demo showcase is trying to score a goal in UEFA, and you know, in the middle of all of our B2B events, and there's always someone there like trying to like get the goal in, and there's like you know, so we're all kids in the end as well. So being able to simplify those two, talk in a very simple, compelling way, use the data for good. If there's data privacy rules that need to be obviously protected, there's also a way of getting zero-based data directly from the customers themselves. What do they want? And really listening to that. Customers give us a lot of information on the B2B side. How do you curate that to make it meaningful and respond with something that's essentially for them? Again, personalized. So a lot of the same trends you're seeing in B2C are now really coming into B2B.
Yeah. And of course, we already learned is that you're really on the tech side. You call yourself nerdy in there, and you talk, let's say, a little bit about AR and the different experiences now. The card is, of course, still a massive important device. But how would you envision the next steps in the future? How technology will change the experiences of consumers with your business?
So we don't issue the cards that our bank, our partner, we partner with 20,000 financial institutions. They issue the card, our acquirers help us, we work with merchants, but we also have many other products and services. We have insights, loyalty programs, we have our economics institute, we have ways of being able to pay directly on your bank rails. There's many other things we do to facilitate that journey. But again, what makes us Mastercard is the power of the cybersecurity shield, the protection against fraud, the care we take with data. As a brand, it's more important that we be responsible than we be fun. It's good to be fun, but it's better to be responsible in our space. And so it's really being very, very considered and managing the brand in a way that's priceless, but it's still delivering that trustworthiness, that security, that responsible agent in society. And I think that's very powerful as a tech brand, whether it's in pay tech or in other industries, to have a code of ethics that is clear for the consumer to see. And I've always believed this even before it became very obvious that consumers want brands with purpose and expect them to act if they can during COVID. You know, we've all seen the stats of 80% of European consumers prefer brands that if they can help with sustainability or whatever, and they're not too damaged by COVID, that they have agency in our society. But I think as technology companies, something that can happen is you get so enamored with the tech And if you're not very explicit, because tech companies have a lot of engineers, so you need brand marketers to explain, we believe in goodness and this is our values externally. That's very, very important for brand identity. If not, the human being, and it happens not only in business, but in life, without information, they assume the worst. And great brands are like great people. You know what people stand up for. You know what they believe in. You know what they do. You watch how they act. And so I think that's a very important thing to connect your brand to and be explicit about your values, but based on what you do, not pretending that you're something else, not greenwashing and all that, just being very focused and trying to drive scale in a couple of key areas that matter to people.
I think you describe, let's say, the role in such context of technology as well. I think so clearly that is so good. I would like to, let's say, bring it maybe to a little bit to the leadership part, because that will also mean something about the role of marketing and the role of you as a leader in the boardroom. I would really be interested how you would see, let's say, really influencing and getting the decision making in with your peers. How you look at that and what you see as what the typically role of marketing should be in that room.
Well, I think in many ways, marketing is sales, but 2 to 3 years out. It's positioning in the customer and the consumer's mind how you want people to think of you and for what. And so that's the more strategic role, is to shape the market and orient your customers to where you want to go to next. And then underpinning that is the how, which is the everyday of, or at least in my life, it's trying to get engineers to tell me exactly what it is, as simply as possible, as humanly as possible, what they're trying to say. Just keeping it very simple and not corporate speak, and very specific, but inspiring, and always laddering up to the brand. And so if you can do those two motions, that intelligent design and the messaging, and also shaping your audience's journey towards the future, you're harvesting the market. You're seeding the market in a way that is important for the future direction of your brand and your products and your services. And it's not easy to be that simple, to be that clear, to be that compelling. And so in my mind, great messaging is priceless.
And Jeannette, when you're let's say you're sharing this, it's so clearly you have your plate full. It's not that we are that we do not have enough priorities, but you make the case for simplicity. It's also, let's say, relates to a leader like you, just as a person. How do you stay on top of your game? How do you invest in your personal growth as leader?
Well, I've never found a job that I couldn't grow in. There's always something new happening. There's always a market that I don't know enough about. There's always a new audience. There's always a new technology. So being curious is really important. And that's why I think when you look at your career and your next step or what you're doing, is the industry you're in, the business you're in, interesting? Does it interest you? Does it make you passionate? That's very, very important as a brand marketer, because that will dial up or dial down your curiosity. And then I think for me personally, I've always considered myself, I come from a small country that is not too stable. So I've always considered myself a champion of the market hidden in global and regional roles. I'm there to champion the country. So that's very important for me. That's where I get my energy. That's where I get insights that I can't get, or that I can't, without market input, without country input, without customer input. You can't validate, even if it's a great insight, or you can't deliver the insight without that last mile.
Yeah.
And so for me, if I can help those people out in whatever way they need, the folks in the field, that gives me a leadership role that I can invest in, no matter how many hours a day. That's important for me.
Of course, you said already a bit in your answer about an advice to, let's say, brand marketeers, really be in a category where you really like to work, to get curious. And a more broader sense, what advice would you give to the next generation of marketeers?
Once I interviewed Robin Wright, and her advice to the next generation of directors, because she's become a director, not only a great actor, I thought was very spot on, which is do every single role you can. Work the camera, understand the lenses, right? Be part of the script editing. Don't only act. Understand the entire filmmaking process, and I think that's very true for when you start a role. I started in research, and then I went into comms, and then I did events, and then I went into performance marketing, and then I went into sales, and then I went into so when you're starting, you're not hampered by being stereotyped like an actor, right? You can do anything. And so even though it might feel like you're quite vulnerable and you don't have many opportunities, that's actually one of the freest periods in your career. And so take advantage of, you don't have to like everything. And as I think we all know, the world is very far from perfect all the time. But at least something, and you can, 15 years on, when you're negotiating with someone, you can understand their point of view because you've done a job like it. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. Well, that is such a valued advice to so many people. So thank you so much for that, Jeannette. To go a little bit to the end, I have still quite a list of questions, but I only need one word to answer.
Okay.
Right. So I just want to shoot them in your direction, and let's see what happens. So Netflix or the evening news on TV?
Netflix.
Your dream job growing up?
Astronaut.
Ooh. And hike in the mountains or lazy day at the beach?
Hike in the mountains.
Twitter or TikTok?
Jury is out.
Oh, the jury's out. Will Argentina become world champion at the Soccer World Championship?
Obviously.
Oh, cooking dinner for friends or off to a restaurant together?
Cooking dinner for friends.
Podcast or just a music playlist in the car?
Podcast.
This is a difficult one, actually, but let's see how we get. What is your guilty pleasure music song?
Oh, I think 80s rock every once in a while. Oh. The real anthem stuff.
Nice. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
Oh, and then the first thing you look on your phone in the morning. What do you
look
at?
The news. That's why I need the Netflix at the end of the day, because
it's Netflix at the end of the day.
I'm fully updated by that point.
So in the end, you chose both of them. Now we only have one jury still out, so I think brilliant answers. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think we are at the end of our time. Could love to speak much longer with you. So thank you so much, Jeannette, with sharing all your learnings and insights. That is incredibly valuable.
Thank you. And it's always a pleasure, Eric. It's a real pleasure, and great job interviewing. It's not easy.
Thank you very much.